Hi, everybody. So my name is Louison. I live here in Silicon Valley. I've been here for about 6 years now. I've been working in crypto pretty much my whole teenage adult life and machine learning as well. And yeah, I kind of just moved here right after high school to try to build the web of tomorrow. That's always been my vision since I was a kid. I've always been so passionate about the web, what we can do with it, and how it can help transform people's lives. So I came here and just observing the way Silicon Valley works, I quickly realized that a lot of Silicon Valley people are really interested in making people addicted to technology. And that just didn't fit my vision. For me, technology is supposed to really, connect with how people actually walk intuitively, how people actually think, not try to hook them up outside of their natural flow of being, but actually come and understand how they actually already behave in order to augment their experience without distracting them. And so that's how I started working on Harmony, which is basically a SaaS, a software as a service that allows businesses to create voice agents very easily, and to make those voice agents basically as lifelike as possible. So we're a small startup. It's obviously still very early stage, but that's the vision behind what we're doing. So I actually prepared some slides. So I'm going to show you. I want to kind of show you my vision, kind of how I perceive all those things through those slides. So let me share my screen. Share. I just got a new OS, so I actually need to enable the privacy setting to let my Mac share the screen. Hold on a minute. Shit, it wants me to quit Zoom to do it. Oh, let me see if I can do something else. Should have tried this before. Oh, here you go. I can actually do it right now. So sweet. So can you see my screen?
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
We can see the browser and some permission notifications.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. So my slides. Present. Okay. So yeah, as I shared, my vision behind all this is to try to create the future of man-machine interfaces, trying to rethink what does the future of how we interact with computers look like, and how can we make this future attractive? How can we make this future something that's good for humanity, really? And so the introduction to that is the realization that the current model, which is basically based on keywords and URLs, is completely outdated. Because humans don't think in keywords or in URLs, they think in ideas and concepts. And we can see how we can use internet well today because we've trained ourselves to always constantly translate what we want to do into a keyword or an app or an address, but it's not really how we intuitively think. And so all that is unnatural, it's destructive, but we're so used to doing it like that we don't realize just how unintuitive all that is. And also one thing is that as the web gets bigger, we have more and more data. And so it just doesn't work anymore to just type in a keyword, because there's just so much data available that there's a lot of noise. We need something that's more based on the context of what we actually mean. And so the objective, going from that model, is to build a web that actually fits better the flow of how humans actually think. And yeah, so that's basically where the web is right now and where we want to go. So where we want to go is what a lot of people call the Web 3.0, as opposed to the Web 2.0. And what the Web 3.0 means basically is, among other things, the fact that right now the Web 1.0 basically was the web that you could read. It was mostly static pages that you could read, but you had not really any way to interact with them. And it was the time of universities publishing their websites and a lot of academic papers and military papers, just static HTML pages. And then the Web 2.0 was the web, and is the web that we have right now, where you can actually write things on the web. Social media, the pages are no longer just static. They actually have servers behind them with processing in the backend, which allows you to actually interact with the page, comment, add something to the web, contribute to the web. So that's the Web 2.0. And what the Web 3.0 is basically a web in which you can execute things. So not only can you read and write, but you can also, the web itself understands the meaning of what you want to do and helps you execute actions on your behalf without needing to necessarily provide as much information as you need to do today. You kind of just express what you want to do, and it understands from the context of what it knows about your life, what it knows about you, and about the moment to actually do something for you. Or even sometimes do something for you in the background when you're not even connected, when you're not even online. Like you tell maybe your web assistant, I would like to maybe buy a house around this area, and maybe your assistant is going to keep browsing all the real estate websites in the background without you having to look at it to find what you're looking for. So it can keep on executing tasks without you having to actively act. So that's also a really interesting part. Another aspect of the Web 3.0 is how the web is indexed, basically. Today, the web is indexed around just pure data and keywords. All the web is indexed by search engines like Google. And what they do is they basically read the pages and kind of identify keywords in the pages, and just type the keywords, and it's more complex than that, but overall you type in the query and it just searches it onto this huge database of just words. It's not based on meaning so much, it's based on just pure data. And the Web 3.0 is also a web in which there's much more emphasis on indexing what data actually means, so that you can search something based on the meaning that you attribute to it in the moment. And so with that type of interface, basically the center of the web, what people use to access the web, is no longer a search engine where people type keywords. It's actually more like an AI companion, like an agent, kind of like what you might have seen in the movie Her. It's like, because there's so much data available and means so many things, it doesn't make sense anymore to use the keyword-based search engine unless you're looking for a very specific type of information. Most daily actions will actually go through most likely an intelligent AI, which actually understands what you mean and connects you with other AIs, with other voice agents, with other natural language agents to help you fulfill the query. But then the only way to make this happen, I think, is through decentralization. And because the reality is that you can't have an AI that understands all the things that you want to do, just like you don't have an internet that is centralized by one company. Sure, you have some big companies, but the internet works and is so powerful because it's got all those different actors on it, all those different people and services, websites running the internet. And so the only way to create this kind of AI companion, AI agent that would really be able to really fulfill your desires and queries in a good way, rather, as opposed to what we have right now, which is Alexa and Siri, which are really, really limited, is to have a way for this central voice agent to communicate with a lot of other agents. And if you want to communicate with other agents, you need to find a way to share the data in between agents, because maybe you say, when we speak with a language, we don't say we don't like do one thing at a time. Right now, when we don't speak, when we use the internet, we have to do one thing at a time. We have to use one window at a time, one app at a time. But when we speak, sometimes in one sentence, we actually might be invoking 2 or 3 different services. And we need those services to be able to communicate in order to understand the overall context of the query and what it needs to do. And so for that communication to happen, we need decentralization. We need a way to have the data not be stuck in an agent or an app, but actually exist and live beyond the apps so that they can all tap into it securely, safely, to understand what you're trying to do. So as an example, let's say you're like, oh, I wanna, I'm here in California. So let's say, oh, I wanna go to San Diego tonight, and I want to find a good place to eat there and maybe a nice hotel. Well, it's very unlikely that there will be one voice agent when I say that is going to be able to fulfill all my queries. I asked, for a good place to eat and for a hotel. That's 2 different requests. Well, if the data could be shared, then basically those 2 services could be called and be provided the context of, oh, this is where he's trying to go. He's trying to go to San Diego, and this is where he is right now. So that's the time at which he's going to get there. And getting there at that time, with his taste in terms of food and blah, 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 then this is what is more likely to like. So that is how decentralization can have a strong use case in the Web 3.0. It's decentralization connected with NLP actually helps us create interfaces that have a level of understanding of our lives and what we're trying to do that is just beyond anything that's out there right now, while remaining safe, because there are ways to do all that in an encrypted manner and in a manner where you actually control where your data is being shared. So yeah, I touched on the interoperable part. That's how decentralized data basically allows data sharing between agents for complex semantic queries. Let's see. So what's in the way of this Web 3.0? Well, basically, so you have this meme on the right. You look at Alexa right now, it's like, yeah, buy me something from Whole Foods. And obviously you're buying the Whole Foods, It's most of the AI companions we have right now, like Alexa, Siri, Google Home, are actually not that much based on AI, but actually still highly based on decision trees and just searching for keywords. So they don't necessarily understand the context of what you're saying. They just like kind of pick up the words, and if they find the matching word in the query, then they assume that's what you want. And that's why so many people are confused by those services and only use Alexa and all those things for very basic tasks like setting up a timer, or asking for the weather, very, very simple basic tasks. And for me, that's kind of sad, because it tells people, oh, this is all that voice can do. This is just very limited. But really, we can do so much more. And all we need to get there is good NLP. Because good NLP is basically how, that's what's going to make those natural language interfaces become mainstream, become the game changers. Right now, they're gadgets. They're gadgets because they don't really work that well. So we need to find a way to develop the systems so that they actually stop being gadgets, stop being things that are, cool to use, fancy to use, but actually complete game changers in the way we use the internet, in the way we relate with the web. And if we can do that properly, it can really be a source of amazing opportunities for humans. So I put this picture, it's from Buzz Lightyear. I don't know if you guys have watched that. I watched that as a kid. So those little aliens, they basically have this little antenna that allows them to be connected to what they call the Uni mind. It's like a universal mind that they all share between each other. And I remember as a kid watching that. I was like maybe 8 years old. And I was like, that's what the internet is. That's exactly what the internet is. It's actually the universal human mind that allows us to tap into something greater than a small, local mind, and share information and connect knowledge and connect information. And that's a complete game changer. It really allows us to do great things in society, because if you think about it, all of society is based on people connecting each other, connecting with idea, connecting with information. And if we can make that better and healthier, then I think there's no limit to what can be achieved. You know, if we can just help connect files, basically. Going beyond, because we sometimes get stuck in the technology, what the internet means, but like if we go to the philosophy, the basics of what the internet is, it's really connecting file, connecting idea, and really creating mechanical telepathy, really, allowing people's ideas to be transmitted to the right people at the right time and without the limitation of space and time, because it can be stored as well. And you know, if to give a very practical example, good NLP, for example, would be achieved when you could create a website with a single sentence. Right now, creating content on the internet, putting yourself out there on the internet, actually still, you know, less than yesterday, but it still takes a lot of energy. Most people hire webmasters, you know, they have to spend a lot of time creating like websites on Wix and all those things. Good NLP would be when you're actually able to express an intent or a service that you're offering, something that you know, something that you can do in the world with just a single sentence. You're telling the web, look, I don't know, I'm a massage therapist. That's what I do. I'm offering massage sessions for $60 an hour here in California, and that's it. And then that information would be stored on the web and people could connect with it. You know, there would still be obviously a need for visual interfaces, and you could still tweak it and add, you know, customize it. But really the basic of like how as a human being can I share something that I'm offering, something that I know with the rest of the world, should be as intuitive and seamless as possible. And then you should be able to add and customize and add more of a brand, of a visual, of an identity behind it, you know, if you want. And still you could do it very intuitively with voice as well. But you should be able to have the original intent be as easy to implement and share as possible. So that would be really groundbreaking if every human being could start to really, you know, explore sharing what's possible with each other. And there's no limit to that. An example could be as simple as, okay, like I actually want to go on a hike this weekend, and I want to go over there and like within a 5-mile radius, and I could connect with other people who want to do the same thing. I could meet new people. There's just no limit to what could be achieved, to how we could connect people based on their intents, by removing a lot of the friction that is right now technical, that is around, okay, well, you actually have to log into a platform like meetup.com and create a post and create an account. And most of that deters people from actually sharing those things. So good NLP is also about making writing content on the internet and reading and executing all of that, interacting with the internet, much more seamless. So what's in the way of that? What's in the way of, you know, good NLP? Well, one of the first things is the learning curve to build and run those NLP agents. Right now, a lot of what's been out there for a few years are things like Dialogflow, which are basically, you know, I don't know if you guys have used Dialogflow. It's not very intuitive. It's still very techy, very nerdy. It's run by Google, so you know they have good software behind it. But the reality is that it's still not really intuitive to use for people who are not in the space. So it's not as easy. Maybe an analogy would be that NLP agent creation right now is where website creation was in the 1990s. It's you have to do everything yourself. There's not really any, and what we want to do is get to a place where we have Wix, where we have a service that allows us to create websites, create NLP agents very, very easily. Another thing that's in the way of NLP is the amount of data that you need to reach a satisfying level of performance, satisfying level of fidelity, to have an agent that actually feels human, that doesn't feel like a stupid bot, you know, but actually feels like a smart, intelligent assistant. Another point is the interoperability, basically connecting data in between agents. And then the context-aware algorithms, like if we can't connect data between agents, then we can't really have those agents hold the context of what we're trying to do. But beyond all those technical things, I think the main thing that's in a way of good NLP right now is the vision that I'm trying to share with these slides. Basically, as human beings, we can't do things if we don't understand where we're going. We can sometimes try, but if we don't have a vision strong enough, we're just playing with technologies. We're just playing with our tools. We need to have the vision of what we're actually trying to build so that we can use our tools to build that thing. And I think what I've been observing in the space is a lot of people are like, think voice and NLP and chatbots and all that is fun. It's gadgety. It's like, oh yeah, it's the future, but there's not necessarily a shared vision of like, okay, what are we actually trying to build? And how is it powerful, and how is it actually changing the web and changing how people relate with technology? And so I think that's what we need right now, finding more confidence in what we're actually building and how it's actually helping create the web of tomorrow, because it can. So, my belief is that voice is really a huge opportunity to disrupt the way the web is built right now. We talk a lot about, GAFA, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, owning the web, owning the tech industry. And it sometimes feels huge and that you can't do anything about it. You can't you can't disrupt those big marketplaces that have just accumulated so much network effect that it just seems impossible to take users away from them. But the reality is that even, giants keep falling. They get big and then they kind of slow down in their innovation because they just have so many processes, so many people to be accountable to, and they just don't innovate anymore. And if you look at those platforms, they just stopped innovating. They're just like cashing in all the cash right now. You see a lot of tech startups, they're not trying to change anything right now. They're not walking on the web of tomorrow. They just have a good network effect. They have all those people logging in every day, and they try to milk really as much money from them as possible. And so that's an amazing opportunity for us to disrupt that and create through new interfaces a way to capture people in a different manner, in a way that actually would be healthier for the users, and in the way that actually would allow the people creating these new interfaces to capture value that was previously held in those big marketplaces. So, a typical example right now, like most hotel booking in the US and in the world, it goes through a website like booking.com or Expedia. Those are big and have huge network effects. But if you could create a voice interface, for example, it's an interface that is voice enabled, because I don't think it's voice only, it's voice plus other things. If you could have an interface that is super intuitive, that you can use with voice, that you can use on the go, then maybe you could actually disrupt the hotel industry and give people a better way to book hotels and get a commission on that and disrupt those big platforms. Because, with the right model, if we're in a place right now in technology that's very interesting, because things move so fast. If people find something that works much better and actually makes their life much better, and it's 10 times better than what there was before, then they're much more likely to share it with a lot of people. And you can actually disrupt the market really quickly. So, for example, today, after this call, I'm actually going to be driving about 500 kilometers to go south to LA. I haven't booked my hotel yet. I want to book my hotel while I'm driving. And, I would like to have an easy way to do it rather than having to go on, on booking while I'm driving or calling people. So that's already a market that, I think could be disrupted. Because see, so this is a picture of a Tesla. And I think Tesla is a very interesting experiment in technology, because Tesla is a company that nobody, at least a lot of people, were not believing in for years. It was super shorted on the stock market. People just found that it was just never going to reach, mainstream adoption. It's still not mainstream, but here in California, you see a lot of them, and I think it's becoming more and more mainstream in the world. And so it's a really interesting thing. How did they go from being, a company that everybody hates to a company that actually is successful? And I think it's because they didn't just try to build an electric car. They didn't just try to take a normal car and make it electric. They thought, how can we actually reinvent the car with electricity? How can we actually use electricity and not...
Two different dashboards that are not in Splunk. These are navigation dashboards.
What's that? Oh, well. And so basically, they thought, how can we reinvent the car using electricity? And they didn't try to take traditional cars and make them electric. They found a way to use electricity not as just being an ethical choice or an opinion or a philosophy, but actually being something that makes cars better. Not only is driving a Tesla better for the earth, but it's actually much more of a fun experience than any other gas cars. I have a Tesla here, and it's like, there's nothing like it. When I drive a gas car, even like a very nice sportsy car, it's just not as nice. They used electricity, and they realized that with electricity, you can actually have amazing accelerations. The Tesla cars accelerate much better than every other gas car. So they used electricity and realized that that allows them to have a computer in the car that gives all those amazing features to the car that you could not have in a gas car because the battery in the car just wasn't powerful enough didn't have enough capacity to power all those features. So they didn't just use technology for the sake of the technology. They used the technology to reinvent completely what the user experience meant, and thus creating a user experience that is so much better that it just has to become mainstream. I'm completely bullish on Tesla. It has to become, electric cars have to become, and replace gas cars because they're so much more efficient. It's not a geek choice anymore. It's just better. So that's what we need to do with voice, with NLP, with all those new technologies. We need to stop thinking about them as cool technologies, but start thinking, how do we actually use them to completely reinvent the user experience and bring it to a level and to a way in which going back just doesn't make sense. It's just so much better. So, we talk about a lot, in Web 3.0 about voice, decentralization. Those things don't mean anything alone. But when we combine them, when we take all those new technologies and we make it the Web 3.0 that's actually much better than what we have right now, then we have potential for widespread adoption. So that's it for my, sharing my vision. So that's my email address if you need to reach out to me for anything. I think the way I want to format this is maybe do some Q&A now, and then after, or maybe during the Q&A, I will show what we do at Harmony, how the interface works, and how you can use it to build voice agents. I just feel like I've been chatting on my own for 30 minutes, so maybe it would make sense to bring in some interaction from the participants.
Thank you, Louison. Any questions from anyone? I don't know, Andrei, Alex, you worked a lot with NLP.
Oh, well.
No. As far as I know, NLP doesn't work very well right now. And will not work for a long time.
What do you think? I feel like I'm asking the question now, but what do you think is making it not work very well right now?
Well, it's maybe mainly because it's very, very expensive to train these models, and they learn only from text. And if you want to really understand, they need to experience life to learn from images or even from real world, from 3D. And that's why it's a limitation. I mean, when you see robots in the world, maybe like us surviving, maybe then we'll have real understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I agree with some of that. And I also think that it's already, I think it's already to a place where you can actually use it to do some cool stuff, but also that we're not gonna get better at it if we don't have people using what's out there right now. Technology doesn't get better on its own. It needs to have people already using what's there. Like Google sucked when it started, the search engine, it wasn't good. wasn't that good. And people start using it, and it creates pressure, economic pressure, for them to make it better. So I don't see the state of NLP as being necessarily a blockage to developing more NLP, but rather as just the state of things that we could just improve as we go.
Yeah, definitely. It will get better, of course, but to really become human, it will take some time.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we're anywhere close to the fully like lifelike AI agent. Definitely not. But I think there's already things we can do between where we're at right now with completely shitty Siri and Alexa and getting to the next spot, which is a lot of very small Siris and Alexas working together to try to actually create something that kind of works. Yeah, any other question?
Yeah, I would have a question. So you talk about good NLP and all of this decentralized little system that helps us like understand us and understand what we want. So how do we actually can make sure that these suggestions and this decision that they offer us are like fair? Because I see here a good opportunity for like big tech or for people that are interested in using this system in order to bias us towards some decisions, and we get in the same point from my point of view here.
So is your question how do we know if what the AI is giving us as like potential action the good thing?
Yeah, if it's fair and doesn't use like my personal, like a lot of my personal information, let's say.
I see. Well, so the way I've been envisioning it so far, and obviously it would take working more on user experience, would be that just like you kind of have an app store on your phone where you can actually decide which apps you're enabling. Let's say you say a query and you're looking for a hotel in San Diego, for example. If you don't have any preferred hotel selection agent, the AI will basically search into its database of agents that published their ability to be able to respond to that query and give you a selection, tell you which all those 5 agents are able to help you find a hotel. Which one would you prefer? You get to choose. And then when you enable it, then it becomes your default agent for finding hotels, but you're always able to change that. And when you enable it, it will tell you what kind of information this agent is going to request from you. So I think it would look like a classic little pop-up window, just like when people install new apps where it says, here's what the app is the developer of the app, and here is what the permission the apps is requesting. So I think that's a model that could work well for that. Which, by the way, something I didn't mention is that we're working in Harmony, so that's the software as a service we're developing. But we're actually also starting to work on a platform called El Camino, which is basically that AI agent from which you're going to do everything. And so we're starting to work on this app store kind of situation in which you can decide which agents to enable in your AI companion. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, in the end, I don't think it's ever going to be fully decentralized. I think, just if the App Store wasn't centralized, there would just be a lot of like fake apps that are, stealing people's data and are not useful. So in that model, I think there would still be a way in which a centralized authority like us would actually be looking at all those voice agents, classifying them by intent, by what they can provide, and making sure they're not stealing people's information, making sure they're using data properly.
I think this sensitive information should be stored by a third party, I don't know, service that should be under supervision by governments. I mean, no site or Google or anyone should have access only to ask from this third party, which is approved by government and safe.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we're actually building the decentralized storage right now is with a platform called Blockstack, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it. So it's a crypto company that basically allows for storing personal data, and then you can share it with only the people that you want. And it's completely encrypted. So the user would basically have their data live in the cloud, decentralized cloud. So it's a lot of nodes all around the world that store the data. But this data is encrypted. So even though it lives on the cloud, it can't be read by just anyone. It can only be read by the people who have the key to decrypt data. So that's how I think we can move towards a world that is post-Google, post-Facebook, where you still have all your data online because it's much more useful, because that way if you have a new device, you can still have all your data you shared with your device. I don't think the future is with data stored locally. That would be a terrible user experience, but it's with data stored in the cloud, encrypted. And that's really what Blockstack brands itself as. If you look at Blockstack online, they brand themselves as a decentralized Google, basically.
Any other questions before we jump to the Harmony? Don't believe so. So, Louison, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So that's our landing page. So as you can see, basically we help people embed voice control on their website. And we basically take care of all the mechanics. You get to just impress your users, and we just provide the technology behind it. We can help with search, for example. For example, here we have an example of a company selling cars, for example. Instead of having to select so many filters of the type of car you want, you could just press the voice button and say, okay, I'm looking for a BMW under $30,000. And then it would automatically detect the entities, which would be BMW as being the brand and $30,000 as being the price, as well as under being, well, we want something that's lower than $30,000. So that's one feature, to just be able to embed voice search, voice command anywhere on the page. You can fully customize it with JavaScript, and it's really easy to customize for your needs. Now we also have something that is more of a, fully provided solution, which is basically just an assistant that you put a little button somewhere on your page. There's actually one here on the bottom of the page that allows you to, the same way, have the user say something, and then you will have trained intents with the data beforehand, and your bot will basically understand the intent, then execute the command that you attached to the intent. So I'm going to show you how all that works. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm just going to connect to my account. I have an account here that I already created. There we go. Well, actually, let me show you how it works in action. So I hope it's not going to undo my connection. I actually have to enable a VPN because, long story short, but it doesn't work from my connection here because the server is here at home. So long story short, I need to connect to a VPN. I hope I'm not losing connection. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Sweet, awesome. So I'm just gonna reload this page. Okay, I'm just gonna try. I'm gonna click this button and say, how much does it cost? How much does it cost? Like, I think what's happening is because Zoom is actually taking my microphone so that you can hear me, my browser can't hear me. So let's see. Well, that's a shame, but it doesn't seem like there's anything I can do because, yeah. Well, it's sad, but if you were to go and get harmony.ai, you could try and say, for example, how much does it cost? And it would show you the price section. Let me actually now show you the dashboard. My computer is slow today. So yeah, I'm not able to show you, sadly, this product in itself with the voice because Zoom is piping my voice microphone right now and won't let my browser take my voice. But I can show you how you get to build such an agent with the dashboard. So we're on the dashboard right now and we can go into training. And here it's gonna ask us for a typical sentence. What is one thing that your users might say that you would want to detect? So yeah, let's take an example. Let's say you want to find, you want to contact the person that is running the website. I would like to contact you. That's what your user would say, or something like that. You just do next, and you create the name of the function that you want to attach to that. So let's say go to contact. So every time someone says, I would like to contact you, it's going to run the function go to contact. You do next. And here you can basically type the code that you want to be executed after the function is detected. So here someone says, I would like to contact you. We detected the function go to contact. And now we need to write this function go to contact. And we have a few built-in commands that we can use. One of them is speak. So speak is basically just going to say something. It's gonna speak to the users back. So we're gonna say, okay, let me redirect you to the contact page. And then, it's just JavaScript. So it's easy. You just have the speak function with what you want to say. And then the next variable is the function that you want to execute after speak. And for us, it's going to be redirect. We're going to redirect the user to the website and to the contact page. You can also, actually execute any of your JavaScript you want in the browser. If you have a special command that you want the page to interact and react a certain way to a specific command, you can actually click on execute JS, and you have this function run browser, which then allows you to run to execute any code that you want on the browser side. You can also just fetch an API. You can use this function fetch to actually call maybe your backend and with some variables and send results. But I'm going to show that later. So let's just have that redirection function for the contact query. We do finish. Now it says sentence successfully saved. So now the thing is we only have one intent, so it's not going to work because it only has one piece of information. So it's not only create one more intent before training, because obviously if the AI just knows one thing, it's always going to respond that one thing. So we're going to try to create something else. We're going to say, let's see, how much does the basic plan cost, for example? Let's say we have a service and there's a basic plan. How much does it cost? And what we can do here is actually calculate cost would be the name of the function. Because we don't want to create a function per type of plan. We want to have a function that can handle all types of plan. That way, if someone says, how much does the premium plan cost? It could still understand that it needs to go to the calculate cost function. So we're going to do that. And then that's a place where we could actually, for this type of query, use something like a fetch API function. We could do fetch, your API.com, /plan, for example. Then here in the variables, basically the variables is basically the entities that are being detected, and you would need to set up that in advance using our documentation. We explain how to do that, but you could basically set your bot such that it detects basic plan or premium plan as being a variable called, for example, plan. So that way, your function will receive the query and say, okay, let's call now the API, let's give them the plan, in this case, basic, and then ask for the price. Then with the results, we could say, well, we could do plus bars plan. So plan costs plus the price. And that way we would have this function respond how much this specific plan costs. And finish. And now, here we go. Now you see status. I don't know if you can see on my screen. It says project is training on SF Dexter 1, which is basically just the name of the computer that's in the other room in my house here. And it has a GPU that basically trains this model. Here we go. It was pretty fast. So we have a GPU here that trains the model on TensorFlow and Spacey and other modeling algorithms, so that your intents and the data provided is actually being turned into a model that is then being run by our service. And then you can basically just go ahead. Well, that's the debug thing. You can actually just go ahead and integrate that script on your page. So we give you the script, and you can shift the information here. You can do an embed thing that just pops up on your website. You can have a full page model thing that opens up. You can choose if you want to position it in a div or fixed position. You can have all these attributes that you can modify here. The color of the microphone, you can really customize the thing to your needs. And you just copy paste that generated code here, put it in your page, and your user will be able to click on it, just like you can click on this one here. Once again, I can't do it because my microphone will not work with my browser here, which is kind of ridiculous since my presentation is about voice. But yeah, you can basically just put this on your page and try it and realize that if you say, I would like to contact you, it's gonna execute the go to contact page, the go to contact function. Obviously, you will need more data for it to be smarter, because someone might not say, I would like to contact you. They might say, how can I reach you? How can I contact you? So you can add more data. But the beauty of our service is that when you type an information, a sentence like, I would like to contact you, we actually have a data augmentation algorithm behind it running that will use a dictionary of synonyms to take the sentence that you gave us and turn it into 10 to 20 sentences. That way, you give us just one piece of data, and we're able, by using a synonym dictionary, to extrapolate this data and create 20 times more data, allowing our models to be much smarter with very little data. So that's also one way in which we differentiate ourselves from platforms like Dialogflow. One, we're easier to use, and two, we actually provide data augmentation in the background, which allows our users to get started with very little data. And obviously, the more data you put, the better, but we allow you to just get started with little data, so that you can get running faster, because the reality is that one of the blockage of NLP becoming more mainstream is just the time it takes for people to have something satisfying. So if we can help people have something satisfying faster, then we can make them more excited about providing more data and keep on building it. So that's kind of why we have those features here. And then as you go back to the dashboard, we help you basically tune in your model, tune up your model and make it better. So you can see how many queries have been requested. You can see the traffic, you can see the average confidence rate, just how confident your model is about the response it's providing to its users. And using that confidence rate, you're then able to basically work on making your model better and better. And that's very exciting because then you can just start, you can actually use your users using your service and access the queries. You can actually see the logs of all the queries being requested. Well, there's no query right now, but using the logs, you can actually see, oh, that's what my users mean. That's what my users want. And that's a really powerful marketing thing as well, because a lot of the time, if you just have a website, you don't know necessarily, if you have a static, like visual website, you don't necessarily know what your users want. There's so much money put into marketing by people trying to understand, what do my users want? People use heat maps, they try to track where the mouse is going, but all this is very limited. If you give an avenue for people to just be able to click a button and say, this is what I want, then maybe your AI is not gonna be able to answer. Maybe your AI doesn't have the function that fits that intent. But then you have the logs, you have the queries, so you can actually be like, oh, look, all my users, there's so many of my users that actually connect and they want that specific thing. Maybe I should create this function. Maybe I should bring my business towards that direction if I have so many of my users asking for this thing. And so it's where it really gets really powerful. You actually can use voice as both a way to make your user experience better and as a way to understand what your users really want, where your users really want to go, and where the whole industry and market in which you are might be going. You have this really important competitive advantage where all of your users become basically like reviewers of what they actually need from your service, what they're actually seeking in your service. So that's really powerful. So I think that's so we also have a behaviors thing that's coming soon, which is basically, we're gonna be able to tell you when users ask for that thing in particular, then they ask for something else. And then you can track kind of what the way people think about using your service, kind of the way people, just getting closer to how people are behaving on your website, on your service, and what they're trying to get from it. So I think that's all I have for the dashboard. I'm open to questions again, that way I can maybe just answer some of your questions about the platform itself.
Well, this looks great, Louison. I do have two questions. First of all is, are there any metrics like statistics on how many user interacted?
Yeah, so when you, like right now, sadly, it doesn't show anything in queries, but if you had queries, you actually would see the numbers of unique users, of queries, and then the average of queries per users, and per session, you have all this information showing up.
Okay. And in case someone, or let's say the agent doesn't match, or doesn't find an intent for the phrase or the sentence, is that stored somewhere in order to get better next time?
Yeah. So it would show up as inquiries. There would be a notification saying that basically giving you a list of intents that were not responded to. So you see this average confidence rate. Basically, we have a model. We have a couple models that we cross-check in between each other. And if the confidence rate of those models drops below a certain number, then we just respond to the user that we're not able to fulfill that request, and we log that request in the queries.
Nice. That's pretty much everything from me for now.
Okay.
If there are any other questions.
So can you handle accents? I mean, people speak differently.
Are you asking about accents? Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we actually, all of our business is, and I know something about accents, I'm French, so obviously sometimes the systems, struggle, but one thing is that most of our business is basically the NLP behind in the backend. We don't do the speech to text. We use Google's API for speech to text. And Google's API, the voice API, the speech-to-text API is actually really, really powerful at recognizing accents, which is why we use it. It's really, I mean, it gets my French accent perfectly well. And they just have so many queries on the Google Assistant and all the Android phones and all the Google Homes that they really have built one of the best speech-to-text APIs out there. Obviously, my vision long-term is to switch to an in-house system and with some open source, system that actually would allow us to not send the data to Google, because I'm not a fan of just sending our users' data to Google. But right now, the reality is that the state of the art in open source is not close to where Google is. So we're using Google while they're the best, and they're really good at recognizing accent. They're also good at recognizing pretty much all the languages on Earth. So we actually also have a setting when you integrate the button on your page where you can specify the language of your users. Or you can use the browser's language of your user as a way to know what language they're using. And we're going to translate their query in real time using Google Translate API. So that's how we provide our users worldwide recognition of all languages and all accents. And recently, as an example, actually, we had a good test of that. With COVID, actually, we built, with the beginning of COVID in April, in March last year, we built a website. We actually built an assistant for a website that was tracking the number of COVID cases. And the guy running the website wanted a way for people to just click on the button and say, how many cases is there in San Francisco, California, for example, where you could just say the name of where you live and have the number of cases. Also say, how many cases is there in Europe? You could just state with your voice the location that you're targeting. And obviously on this website, there were users from all around the world. This website had millions of page views every day. It was just a very popular COVID website. And we had users speaking all kinds of languages. And what we would do is basically have on the JavaScript code embedding the voice button, we would have language and then put use the function, I don't know how it's called, I think it's called window browser language or something. Ask the browser to give us the user language, then bring that language to our server so that our Google speech-to-text could understand the right language. And then we would basically respond by translating the English response that we had in our code to the language of the user using Google Translate. So it was a really good experiment to see just how well our service would work internationally with all types of languages.
I have another question. So can you handle also linked questions? So one question coming after the other, referring to the same topic.
So, okay, so basically, like, can we handle context-aware questions, which basically holding the context of what the person. So we don't natively handle it yet in our dashboard. That's coming soon. But the way you can actually already do it, and I believe we specify that in our documentation, is by chaining the queries yourself. So in the code, you have an ability to basically let the user speak to say something, and then wait for their answer, and then basically create your own decision tree within your own code to do something based on the next thing they're saying. So that way, by chaining those promises of listening and then receiving the result of what the person said, you're actually able to create an interface, a conversation that follows a scheme. But it's definitely still very, it takes code. It's not really user-friendly yet. So that's definitely on our list of next things to do.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question. do you want to implement also question and answering from a document? I mean, I don't know, there are websites with help manuals or text and
yeah, that's actually a very good one. So we actually one of our marketing strategy that kind of growth hacking strategy that we're using for a couple months is we had a crawler that would go and scrap websites that it found on LinkedIn and scrap their frequently asked questions and turn that into a model. And then we would have that model being recorded using a screen capture, and we would cold email people. It was a bot. It was kind of cold emailing, not super proud of it, but I feel like if you can cold email people and provide them value, it's better than nothing. So we were cold emailing people with a link to a video showing them their own website with their frequently asked questions turned into a voice agent. And we got quite a few people that really liked it because they just received this email, they click on the video and they see their own website turned into a voice agent. So yeah, we do that. And the way we do it is, once again, using Google's API. Google is an API that actually turns content into questions and answer. You can turn FAQs basically into a list of questions and answers. So we would use that and then turn those questions and answers into intents on our service. It's not available on the dashboard, though it's something we implemented in the backend and that we can do for you, though, as a user. If you shoot us an email, we can just run that bot, that script on your website, on the website you're looking at modeling, and we can implement that on your bot. Does that answer your question?
yes.
Sweet. Yeah, it's actually a really good point, and I think actually, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a really major thing we need to develop right now in the dashboard, because helping people transform their website into a voice-enabled service and do it the fastest way possible is really a major element, I think, in increasing voice adoption. So if we can just, I think I want to create an interface where the person can just enter their website URL, will go on the website, look at what the website says, what the website is doing, and try to automatically present a bot that you can just enable.
Yeah, there is Amazon Kendra which is doing, I think, the same thing I did. I mean, you could use it.
Amazon Kendra?
Yeah, it's new service for a question and answering from websites, from documents, or whatever. You just give it a document and it. So yeah, you can have a look if you want to use it.
Cool, thank you. And is it voice-based?
Not sure. Could be.
Okay. Yeah. Any other question? I guess I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. Nobody else? It doesn't have to be a question about necessarily the dashboard or the service I just showed. It can be about just generally the philosophy, like where the tech industry might be going in terms of all this new technologies.
Yeah, that's a good topic, mostly also because you're living in Silicon Valley. Maybe can you briefly describe what are the trends right now or in this area I'm referring?
Yeah, well, it's interesting here because since COVID, a lot of people just moved out of Silicon Valley because rents are so expensive, life is so expensive here. So a lot of people moved out, just don't, the way Silicon Valley used to be before COVID was every night, like 20 meetups in person about NLP and crypto, and like if I wanted to go somewhere or not, it just had 20 options, just so many people walking on this thing. So it's a really exciting place. Right now, a lot of people are moved, maybe temporarily, maybe they're gonna come back. But so I guess it's not really so much about Silicon Valley anymore, but just the whole tech industry. And what I'm sensing is, as I shared in my slides, a lot of people playing with the technology, but not necessarily holding like a humanitarian vision behind it, or a vision of actually trying to make it better for humans. But often, sadly, like I'm quite skeptical of Silicon Valley and tech startup like philosophy, because a lot of it is based on transhumanism, which is basically the idea that humans are kind of, dumb, or like maybe not good enough, that reality, physical life is just not really fulfilling, and that the better, the way we should go towards is basically augmenting humans using machines, using chips in the brain, using VR, and just finding ways to get humans out of their physical condition and into virtual realms. And I'm really against that, because I think it's really dangerous for people. Like, we need to be connected to the earth. We need to be connected to each other as people on earth physically to feel fulfilled. And so that's where I'm really skeptical and disagree with a lot of what the industry is doing. A lot of people want to use voice in connection with VR, for example, to create this amazing, like super high fidelity experiences. And all that they're really trying to do is trying to suck people more into the digital space so that they can show them more ads, so that they can make more money using them, so that they can turn their whole life into a product. And that's really something I stand against, and one of the reasons why I want to promote interfaces that actually are so smart that they help you be present in your space, that they don't distract you, that you can actually interact with places, with information, with actions all around the world where you are, without having your attention go away constantly. It's ridiculous how much, people's attention is completely captured in our devices and not present. So there's almost like a Buddhist philosophy behind my vision, like this coming back to the moment, something that is it's not about, it's just about being present. I think it's a quality that should be the religion of Silicon Valley, because everything, if you think about it, is kind of a religion. All of your ideas are always, live in a context of belief systems. So that's the belief system for which I try to work, a belief system in which coming back to this moment, coming back to our experience physically, is the driving force for technology, not transhumanism.
Yeah. Also, going back to Harmony, I know that you're still building the app, the platform. Is there any beta user that already is testing the product?
Yeah, so we have about 150 beta users right now.
Nice.
Yeah, and once again, most of it is cold emailing and reaching out to small startups. There's actually a few promising startups that are wanting to implement it. There's an analytics startup that's really interesting. Analytics is a good use case because they have all this data from people, from websites, and it can be pretty hard for people to filter through this data to extract meaningful information. And so by using our service, they will allow the users to just say, oh, like, how many users did I get from Europe last month using a mobile phone, for example, and just have the results instantly instead of having to go through so many filter selections. So that's one use case I'm pretty excited about, among others. Yeah. And also that's one way in which I see our platform could grow organically, because just like our model is similar to Intercom. Intercom basically got famous because people would embed it on their website. Then they would see powered by Intercom, so they would click on it and want to do the same thing on their website. So I'm trying to get our service into startups so that startup users can see the service and want to integrate it on their own service.
Yeah, got it. And what is the most common business vertical that is using your product?
I mean, there hasn't really been any like, major verticals standing out right now. It's just been different people. I mean, like I said, it's early stage, and reality is it's been mostly like geeky little things, and I'm not super satisfied with that. I want more, but that's just where we're at right now.
Yeah. And my last question, did you consider the use case for healthcare?
Healthcare?
Yeah. Because
so,
I would see a value there.
Yeah, so yeah, it's crossed my mind. The thing with healthcare is that the compliance regulations around that data privacy are much higher than in other industries. And the fact that we're using things like Google speech to text makes it more complicated to comply to those things. Because if you're using voice recognition to treat, sensitive patient information, and it goes through Google, and we know that Google really, will use often your data to improve their services, and even like send your data to third parties to help them improve their services. That's not super fun for sensitive patient information. So we haven't done that yet because of that.
Yeah, and there's also HIPAA.
Exactly.
Cool. Thank you very much.
But yeah, once we have in-house speech to text with maybe open source systems in the future, then maybe that could be possible.
Yeah, a bit easier. Cool. Any other questions? We can also use chat messages if that's more easy.
I think would be cool to add also a virtual persona. I don't know how to say the image. I mean, you add like image of a person who make gestures and try to speak. I mean, usually people don't like to speak to someone who you cannot see. I mean, if you really see a guy in the corner of the screen, and it's more interesting and help you. I mean, he walks around and tells you, look, push this button on this web page or something.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. And part of fitting the human experience, fitting what is intuitive for humans, is understanding what humans are expecting when they're speaking to anyone. So definitely there's a lot of work we need to do so that when the user says something, the page interacts and becomes alive almost. I think it could be with a little person moving. It's pretty difficult to do right now with the technologies that are out there, but it could be possible. We just didn't really invest energy into that. But I think just having the page kind of visually move and have transitions and animations as you speak and as you do things could already give the users a sense of that something is moving, something is going on. They're not just speaking to a dead computer. And that's something that you can actually already do with our service, because you can actually run JavaScript in the browser as a result of a command. You could have the JavaScript run animations in the browser, but that's not something we provide. That's something our user has to code on their own.
Yes.
Anything else?
Well, if there aren't any other questions, Louison, thank you very much for sharing also your vision and your product, and for joining this meetup. And yeah, if possible, we have your email address. If there are any other questions, we can reach out to you, and also you can reach out back to us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm French, so we're like almost neighbors. I'm not in France right now, but it feels good to chat with some Europeans. I love Americans, but still nice view of your opinions.
Okay, thank you again. Thank you all for joining. Have a good day to you and a nice evening for us.
Great. Have a good night, everybody. My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.